Why did you want to write this book? A lot of people try to stay away from pain, especially their personal pain. Why did you want to write this book?
Well, my ministry has always been for hurting women. And I myself has been through a lot as a woman, but I really wrote the book to show women in particular that even though you went through something so horribly that you feel that no one cares, no one loves for you, there is a person out there that loves you, and that is God.
Bookaholics, help me welcome Patricia Monserrati to the Bookaholic podcast. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. And I'm very happy to be with you today.
Yes, we had some scheduling challenges, but we finally made it up until
Yes.
today.
I am so happy that I am here today with you.
Yes, well, I'm glad you're here as well. May is Mental Health Month, and I think we have a subject matter through your fictional book that really is unfortunately a reality for a lot of people in our world today. And so let's go ahead and explore your book and then get around to maybe how a person can take hold of their mental health once something like this may happen to them, and even how you work that out for yourself. So, you are a debut author,
Yes, I am.
and your book is called Blueprints of Shades.
Mhm.
And I read your Amazon description many, many times. And, there's something bad, needless to say, that happens to the protagonist in this story. And then I read your author blurb, and I think you have some experience with maybe something of the same thing as the protagonist.
Yes.
So before we get into the storyline, why did you want to write this book? A lot of people try to stay away from pain, especially their personal pain. Why did you want to write this book?
Well, my ministry has always been for hurting women. And I myself has been through a lot as a woman. And I wanted to show that even though you go through these hardships, these pains, suffering, you're not alone. But it's hard to know that when it actually happens. Sometimes it can take a long time for you to process what has happened to you. But I really wrote the book to show women in particular that even though you went through something so horribly that you feel that no one cares, no one loves for you, there is a person out there that loves you, and that is God. God has an unconditional love. He has no criteria that you have to accept his love. All you need to do is just know who he is and trust him. And that's what the book really came about. I was very involved in the women ministries for many years. But
Mm-hmm.
about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with with a disease that unfortunately I had to stop my ministry. And I didn't know what I was going to do to continue my ministry into where, because I couldn't drive, I had to have someone with me. So I prayed and I asked God, I said, now I know you had given me this ministry. I said, so how can I continue? And he said, write a book. I said, write a book. What about? He says, look back and see where I brought you from and how the incident affected your life. So I
Yes.
took what incident happened to me and I wrote it in a book. Of course, it's a romance novel, so there's a lot of drama and romance and things like that. But the core of it is if you experience something so dramatic that it leaves you where you don't know who you are, where you're going, or if anyone will ever love you, the core is there is someone that has unconditional love, and that is God.
Wow. Wow. That's a great message. Such a great message. So let's dive a little deeper. So we all know that there is such thing as rape and sexual assault, and we see it in the media, we see it, everywhere. But when it happens, if it happens to you, I can see how a person would kind of like fold into themselves
Yes.
and be so, disparaged and be ashamed. I think, of course, and I have not experienced any of
Mhm.
that, but
Yeah.
so ashamed that even though
Yes.
they know other people have experienced it, they're so ashamed. They're so deep involved in their own experience and ashamed. And Patricia, you as a minister and have been ministering to women in the transitional type of cycles, what would you say to that person when they were haven't been able to process it themselves as of yet? What would you say to that person?
I would say to them, stop blaming yourself. It wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong to cause it. That's one of the things that, mine's happened when I was a little child. I was only six
Mm.
years old.
Oh
But of
my.
course, when something like that happens, I still, when I got to be in my 12, 11, 13, I experienced the same thing. I'm like, okay. And it happened two more times. I was like 12
Oh,
years old, and then I was like maybe 15. And it didn't go all the way to the extreme, but
right.
it was where um, they took advantage of me, and I didn't know how to protect myself. When I started college, I began to. Now you have to understand that I've been in church ever since I was 8 years old. Okay.
Yes.
And so it's like I'm in this protection, but I yet got hurt. And that's what a lot of women don't understand, that you can still be in church and you can still get hurt. That would hinder your mental capacity. It makes you feel like you're not worthy, makes you feel like
Mm-hmm.
you're dirty, make you feel like,
Mm-hmm.
how can you ever be married because of what
Right.
has happened to you? And I had to process that. I had to get a true relationship with God. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
key. You have to know who He is and trust Him. And when I began to find that out, then it helped me to process it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything to make it happen. The people that did that to me, they're the ones that had the problem, not me.
Right.
But I
Right.
want to
Right.
explain to you, even though, Deirdre, when I did get married, my husband didn't know, but I was really suffering because things that you do as a couple when you get married,
Right.
I still felt, but it took a while. It took for
Yeah.
me to really accept and know that what I was doing as a wife with my husband wasn't dirty.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Because when it
Right.
happens to you, not in the sanctity of what God and what God wanted you to experience, then when it does happen in a beautiful way, it
Right.
still feels dirty until you really kind of like comprehend and say, no, this is what God intended for me to have.
Exactly. 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 Wow. Yeah. And, that takes, I can think of some instances of things that have happened to me, not of that nature, but,
Mhm.
that I have had to process. And it has taken decades. It's
Yes,
taken
yes,
decades for me to
yes,
process some
yes.
of these things, and just I forgave, and then sometimes it would resurface, and but it took
Mhm.
decades to really become at peace
You
with some
have
of
to
the
come at peace.
instances.
Yes, that is
Yes,
correct,
most.
because it's like you have to come to peace to what happened. You have to come to peace that it happened to you. And you have to come
Yes.
to peace that God, even though it happened to you, He was there through it all. And
Right.
if I didn't have God, honestly, Deidre, I don't think I would be here today. I really
Right,
don't.
right,
Because he's the one that took care of my mind. He's the one that told me it's okay. You're beautiful. You have a
right,
lot to offer. It took a
right,
lot of me, a lot of years for me to really understand that and grasp that. I'm not
right,
saying that it's going to happen overnight.
right,
Okay.
right,
And it will affect you mentally because you will always see yourself unworthy.
right,
And
right,
now I see myself, I'm worthy of God's love. I'm worthy of people's love. I'm worthy of it because I know that God loves me without no problems or anything like that. He loves me. He
right.
has no criteria for me to even accept his love. He just loves me unconditional.
Exactly, exactly. And what you were saying that you might not even have been here today had it not been for your belief. And just last night at dinner, we were talking about my husband and son and I were talking
Mhm.
about, that's one of the things is your belief system is what keeps this, it makes the difference of people who have committed suicide, of people who
Right.
have gotten on drugs and can't shake it loose because they were looking for something and they were looking
Yeah.
for something and they turned to a drug or they turned to a group that was not good for them, and it makes a difference. And that those choices can lead to death if you don't incorporate a belief system. And for us, that's God. Other people might have other belief systems, but our thing last night, we came have some type of positive belief system because
That's right.
it is the difference between life and death.
It is. And not only, people always think that it's just only sexual. No, you can really be abused mentally. You can be with
Yes,
someone that they have such a hold on you that they kind of like tell you you're no good, you're this and
right.
you're that, and you will begin to believe them. And I've
Yes,
met many women that was in abusive marriages, but were afraid to leave because they felt like, what were they going to do? They had no education, they have no job. Their only support was their husband or their boyfriend or whatever. And
right.
when you're in that situation, a lot of people say, "Oh, I would leave." Not necessarily, because
Not
you are
necessarily.
so connected to that person and to what they have told you in the past,
Right,
and you
right.
believed it and it's ingrained in you, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to leave.
Yes. And don't forget about finances. It could be a
That's
woman that's ready to go and that realize the hold is there, but the finances is like almost the last thing because there's
that's it.
still inequitable pay between men and women. And you get out there, and so for some women without a man, and you're broke, maybe
That's
headed towards homelessness. I
that's
mean,
it.
I'm just saying,
No, no,
so
you're right.
true.
You're right. And now that you mentioned that, I read this article once that even the top women in the Fortune 500 companies don't make as much as the men. Now that to
No,
me
no,
is unfair because they are
no.
just as qualified, just as intelligent, just as knowledgeable. I mean, if you put them in those type of positions that are high, shouldn't they be paid the same amount? Because we now in this generation, we have a lot of women that are raising families by themselves.
Yes. Yes, they are. Most
That's it.
definitely. Well, this is a little bit off the subject, but to your point, in the
Hmm.
last month, we've seen dynamic women in college basketball. And
Yes.
I believe
So
that Caitlin Clark was throwing up threes just like any man could throw up threes in the NBA. And
yes,
she started her new career playing for the WNBA, I think the other week,
the other
throwing
week.
up threes. And I think her pay is somewhere around $76,000. And you think about the guy that plays on an NBA team sitting on the bench. and
Mm-hmm.
he's still making much more than Caitlin Clark. That makes me mad.
Yes.
That makes
Yes.
me
I was
really, really mad.
I was really excited for her. But then, as you said, when you look at how the pay is, how they treat the women's skills at a minimum, yes, it
Right.
does make me mad. Yes, I agree with you
Yes,
total
yes.
100%.
Yes, yes, and she's got brand deals, which is wonderful, but her pay, that's
Yeah.
the value of what she's doing on the court, her pay should be more aligned with her skill set. And her skill
And,
set is up against any man, I say, that throws up threes in the NBA.
and you said the real point is her value.
Her
How
value.
much her value. And this is society today has a tendency not to value what women has. I'm
That's
not saying
exactly right.
everybody. I'm just saying as a society as a whole. And this has been going on for centuries because the women back way back in the early 90s, 1920s and 20, they was fighting for the right to vote. So
Yes,
it's how
yes,
society has put certain values on women. We're supposed
exactly.
to be the homemaker. We're supposed to be in home. We're supposed to take care of the man. That's okay. But yet, if they have extraordinary skills, we should value that.
Most definitely, most
Mhm.
definitely. Well, now let's dive into Blueprints of Shades. Now,
Okay.
you read a little bit about it here, and a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, I like to read spicy stuff, or I'm not sure I want to read about romance and God and stuff. So, how did you incorporate a romance with a God lesson?
Honestly, Deidre, that was the Lord. he kind of like he kind of like showed me how to go about to putting it together. uh, i have
Okay.
received I have received many reviews saying that that's the one thing they really enjoyed was that the romancing, the love scene, they were able to imagine it because it wasn't all written down there in black and white. They said
Right.
they liked it because it was clean. I wanted a book that will reach the women who love romance novels, but yet
Yes.
them, teach them how to find about God. That's my goal. My goal is to use my books as a tool to show women and men, because if the
Mhm.
women finds out,
Mhm.
then the men will watch them and they will see,
Right.
oh, well, there's something different about her. What
Right.
is she doing that's making her happy? Okay.
Right.
So
Right, right.
I want my books to be where, even though it talks about God, but I want it to be real. In other words, it's something happens in the real world. I want it in my book. And I
Mhm.
wanted to show that it's not all fantasy. It's
Right.
not all
Right.
about the boy meets the girl, the boy loses the girl, the boy gets the girl back, and then they live
Right.
happily ever after. That's not reality.
That's
It's not
not
reality.
reality.
No,
No,
it's
it is
not.
not.
And I was just thinking the other day, I said, little girls, you and I together has been brainwashed that we're going to get our prince on a white horse and we're going to live in the castle forever and ever. Am I right, Deidre?
Yes, you're 100% right. There was a time, Patricia, when I wanted the story of Cinderella to be completely banned. I felt so
Really?
strongly about that. Yes, I wanted that story banned because I did not think little girls needed to hear that message, that some Prince Charming will come around to save you. And luckily for me, I've been seeing commercials. There's one where it was like she's Rapunzel letting her hair down out of the tower, and a prince
Right.
comes to save her, and she's like, "Oh no!" She rolls her hair up. She doesn't want to
I
be
saw
saved.
that. Yes,
She's
I did.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, I
you
saw
know,
that. I saw that.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes
My book.
princes come in on
Uh-huh.
that white horse, and then they turn into something totally different.
True. That is correct. That is correct. And I tell people today, well, especially women, because when women get married, they have this ideal of what marriage is going to be. And, this is my 44th year of marriage to one
Oh,
man.
wow.
And I tell them, you're going to have to learn how to fall in love with your husband over and over because you are two different people. You have different ideas, different goals, and you're going to hit. It's just natural. Yes, you're going to have that honeymoon time, but there's going to come a time when situations happens that you're going to have to decide, is this worth working towards for, or is it
Yeah,
not? And
right.
so I tell women all the time, yeah, you may get your little prince on the white horse, and there
Yeah,
may be love and, honeymoon, for the, let's just say 5 years. But
right,
after that, you're going to have to work to keep your prince with you because it's going to
right,
take hard work and you're going to have to fall in
right,
love with
right,
him over and over again.
right. And
You know.
let's not forget to tell the men the same thing.
Oh yes, oh yes.
They gotta put
It's
in work.
funny. It's funny because, some of my retreats for women, the husband comes. And so
Oh,
I tell him, I says, now, what I'm going to say in this retreat, you may not like it, but check your Bible and you'll find out.
right, right. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, here's one question that I wanted to ask you.
Mhm.
What if there was a non-believer, and how would you convince a non-believer to read your book, knowing that there's a
Well,
God message in there?
well, a lot of things I tell non-believers because I have met some at my book signing and some of the bookstores, and they said,
Mhm.
"Well, I don't believe in God and this and that." I said, "But do you like a good romance novel?" And they say, "Yes." I said, "Do you like a lot of drama, a lot of suspense and mystery?" And they say, "Yes." I said, "You'll find it in my book." And I tell
Right.
them, don't think of it just a Christian book, but think of it
Mhm.
as a book that will help you, that would teach you, that would show you things that maybe no other book would show you. And so
Yes.
I have told them that because yes, there are some, that say, well, this is a Christian, novel is maybe
Right.
about God, but I tell them, no, God is there true, but
Right.
there's a lot of things that happen to my character that it probably happened to you. And the
Right.
way she thought, the way she saw things, it could be you. So
Right.
I tell him that. And like I
Right.
said, I really want my book to not just reach the Christian community or those that believe in God, but I wanted to reach those that are hopeless, that feel like they have no hope or they have no answer to
Right.
what they're going through. I want them to be able to read my book and let a little light say bing, and they say, that was my goal for this book, and that is my
Right.
goal for my remaining books that will be coming out.
Yes, 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 yes. And speaking of, I love the way your book reads. It's like feeling betrayed, Oliver devises a sinister plan to ensure no one comes between them. And the two young hearts understand that both are struggling with pain, though each different. Will they trust God's unconditional love to heal their brokenness or to bring their blueprints of darkness to blueprints of light? Or will it be sabotaged by Oliver? So, yes, there's a lot of intrigue and suspense
Mhm.
as well as romance in this book. I
Yes.
think that your formula is genius.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I give God all the praise. To be
Yes.
honest with you, what it says, it's my first book. Yes, it is my first book. My
Hmm.
first
Hmm.
time as an author. I've always had a creative gene in me, I guess you can say. My
Yes.
daughters, they always used to tell me, Mom, you have experienced so much. Why don't you write a book and share it? And I used to just
Right.
tell them, oh, no, that's okay. I'll just stick with my retreats, my my
Right.
seminars and things like that. And
Right.
lo and behold, God turned my life to where I couldn't do that anymore. And now
Yeah.
writing the books is coming into fruition. And
Yes.
to be honest with you, Deidre, I am enjoying it. My publisher wanted me to do a second book on this one, but I had already
Mhm.
started another book,
Right.
and I
Okay.
told them about the second book, and they were so excited. I said, okay. But as I began to do the second book, there was so much of the three minor characters that their story was evolving into a whole book. So
Yes.
I called my publisher and I said, listen, this is what's going on. I said, can we make this a series? And they said yes. And they were quite pleased with it. So I'm working on
Yeah.
the 4 book series. And then when I finish that, I'll come back to the first book and do a second one.
Wow, what a success story. That sounds awesome. So your
Yeah.
second book will be a series of 4?
Yes, it's about these 4 best friends, women best friends that grew up from childhood until they graduated from high school. However, when they left, they all went to different colleges. They had
Sure.
different plans for their life. So they all
Sure.
left. The first book deals with the young girl where she has to learn what forgiveness is.
Ah.
The other friend, she finds out that her boyfriend was lying. She comes home one day and he has taken everything, didn't leave her nothing but the gum wrap on the floor. Then the other third friend, she innocently become a mistress. That one is a very interesting one. Yes. Remember, all these 4 women are in church, in Christ, know about Christ.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, she's the baby really of the group. She goes through very hardship. At the very first book, this book that
Mm.
I'm writing now, she's going to experience a dramatic experience, but you won't know
Mhm.
what happens until the 4th book.
Wow. Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
yes. So
Patricia,
I'm really
again.
excited about these books.
Yes.
I had to kind of like talk to my editor about this book because she has her idea of how she wants to have it end, like
Yeah.
live all together, and go out in the sunset. It's not going to happen until the last
Right.
book.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds so awesome. So much to
yeah,
look forward to.
yeah.
Wow.
Thank
Well,
you, thank you.
Patricia, that just sounds unbelievable. I love this for you. And, real quick, have you heard of the bookstore called The Ripped Bodice?
No, I have not heard of
The
that.
Rip- the Ripped Bodice. I've interviewed one of the co-owners here on the Bookaholic podcast, and the
Uh-huh.
Ripped Bodice is a 100% romance bookstore in Los Angeles. And in the
Oh,
last year, they opened up the same bookstore in Brooklyn. So it's a coast to coast bookstore. Make sure your books are in the Ripped Bodice.
I definitely will do that. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, I have a date in October that I'm going to DC. My
Okay.
editor, she wants me to come and sell my books at her book signing. Okay, because she wrote a
Wow.
book
Okay.
about puzzles. And she
Okay.
called me and she says, I want you to share this with me. So we're gonna bring your books and we're gonna do this together. And I'm so honored that she wants me to do that with her and with other authors. So I'm really
Yeah.
excited about that.
Yes. Well, I think a lot more will be coming to you, and it just sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your books. Patricia,
Well,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for joining me on the Bookaholic podcast today.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it. And I thank you very much for your time and for even talking with me and my book. I appreciate it.
No problem. I loved it. Thank you.